Welcome to another instalment of Romantic Rendezvous Lockdown. My name's Sharon Sherry. Today we are going to have a reading from each of three talented authors, Tricia Stringer, Jenn J McLeod and Helene Young. Ladies, welcome and thank you for being with us today. Before I hand over to them, a bit about each of our authors. Tricia Stringer is a best-selling and multiple award-winning author. Her books include The Model Wife, Table for Eight, and the rural romances Queen of the Road, Writer's Reign, Riverboat Point, Between the Vines, A Chance of Stormy Weather, Come Rain or Shine, and Something in the Wine. She has also published historical saga called Heart of the Country, Dust on the Horizon, and Jewel in the North, are all set in the unforgiving landscape of 19th century Flinders Ranges. Tricia grew up on a farm in the country South Australia and has spent most of her life in rural communities as owner of a post office and a bookshop, as a teacher and librarian, and now as a full-time writer. Woo, I'm tired already. She lives in the beautiful Copper Coast region with her husband Darryl, travelling and exploring Australia's diverse communities and landscapes, sharing her passion for the country and its people through her authentic stories and their characters, their vivid characters. Jenn J McLeod is an Australian author, 4 times published with Simon & Schuster and worldwide with Head of Zeus UK. She's been writing her signature small-town fiction stories since 2013 when House for All Seasons was awarded No. 5 top-selling debut novel. Now a full-time nomadic novelist touring Australia in a purple and white caravan called Myrtle the Turtle, she's published her 6th novel, House of Wishes, and it, along with all her Australian fiction books, can be found at your favourite e-tailer and on her website, in the bookshop that never closes. Helene Young swapped the sky for the sea to go in search of adventure with her husband aboard their sailing catamaran. The rural and remote places she visits, along with the fascinating people she meets, provide boundless inspiration for her novels. Her strong interest in both social justice and the complexity of human nature shapes the themes she likes to explore. Her 7 novels have won many awards, including 5 Australian Romance Reader Awards for Favourite Romantic Suspense. Without further ado, I will fade into the background and leave our authors to read to you.
Thanks so much, Sharon, for that lovely interview, or introduction that should have been. I'm was the one that came up with this crazy idea that we should all do a little bit of a reading, but that was really inspired by Jenn J McLeod and Jamie Brooker's fabulous Boredom Busting Books Facebook page. Go and check it out. It's awesome, where a bunch of different authors read from their work. And I thought that was a really lovely idea, and it was something that I wanted to explore for this. So during the time of COVID, it's all been a little bit tricky staying connected. And thank you to ARRRD for running this lockdown rendezvous, because it's wonderful to bring writers and readers together again and for us to be able to connect with you guys. And I know the ladies agree with me with all of that. So what we thought we'd do would be to read a little bit from either our book, or in my case, I'm reading from somebody else's book, and have a talk about the different stages of a romance. So, and thankfully, without any, any disagreements, because we don't disagree, we're romance writers, we're fabulous. But we had all chosen the appropriate piece to read. So I'm reading a piece that starts where the 2 characters meet each other. Then we move to Tricia, who's going to read a bit where the characters are starting that lovely dance, where they're just starting to get to know each other, and you know that we're moving forwards. And then we kick off to Jenn, who's going to open the bedroom door and get a little bit more intimate and talk about how that little came to be in her story. So the book that I'm reading from is Meredith Appleyard's When Grace Went Away, which is her latest book. And it's a lovely story, and I love Meredith to bits. So when I read it, I went, this is the bit that I want to read, because she writes so gently. And you get this lovely sense of the characters without her trying to do anything. You just get this lovely sense. So this is where they first meet, and there are 3 characters involved. So you'll work out what's as we go. So from When Grace Went Away by Meredith Appleyard, and this is a scene, the very opening scene, where Grace has had a few too many wines. She's just emerged from the bathroom where she's thrown up. And she's working out what she wants to do from there. So here we go. Squaring her shoulders, she drew herself up to her full height of 168 centimetres. plus her heels. Shoulder bag clutched tightly to her side, she ventured out. Putting one foot carefully in front of the other, she advanced towards the bar and was almost there when a firm hand clamped onto her shoulder. "Whoa there, girlfriend," came a gruff voice from behind. Grace stiffened. She shrugged off the hand and spun around to face her accoster. "Just who do you think you..." The words died on her lips. The female police officer was tall and built like a brick you-know-what. She had cropped white blonde hair that was at odds with her eyebrows, thick black slashes above the palest of grey eyes. Grace fought back a giggle and hiccuped instead. "I take it that's your black BMW SUV out there in the car park? How did you know that?" The officer scanned the bar slowly before returning her pale gaze to Grace. "I know who belongs to every other vehicle out there." "All right. I hope you weren't thinking about driving it any time soon. Here in Miners Ridge, we take a dim view of people driving under the influence." Grace shook her head, regretting it immediately when her vision started to pulse. She needed a tall glass of water, some painkillers, and a long lie down. "Is there anyone who can take you home?" She said, eyes darting around, trying to focus on the dozen or so patrons perched at the bar. She didn't recognise any of them. But why would she, after all these years? And where the hell was her brother? The barman was watching, industriously polishing beer glasses. Cute and half her age, he'd kept refilling her wine glass, flirting and laughing with her in encouragement. She'd been flattered. Now she felt foolish. Turning her back to the bar, Grace looked everywhere but at the police officer. "I was going to drink some water. Wait a while before I drove home." The police officer tutted, shaking her head. "Without getting you to blow in the bag, my guess is the pub will be long closed before you're ready to get behind the wheel again." "I can run Grace home." A deep voice rumbled to Grace's right. The police officer's attention shifted. "That's bloody decent of you, Aaron. They haven't roped you into being on the Rural Watch Committee again this year?" "Nah, not a chance. I've done my time." Grace glanced between the police officer to the man who'd come to her rescue. Aaron? She might have had a bit to drink, but she knew they hadn't met before. She would have remembered. Aaron was taller than the police officer, but not by much. He was broad, muscled, and wore faded denim jeans that clung to his thighs like a second skin. His shaggy hair was swept back from a tanned brow. Piercing blue eyes regarded her without judgment. Grace's brow furrowed. The police officer cast her a cool glance before clapping Aaron on the shoulder. "Thanks, mate. I'm already late for the meeting. They've probably ordered their meals. Catch ya." When she'd gone, Grace studied Aaron. "Do I know you?" "Probably not, but I know you're Grace Fairley, and I know where you live. Let's go." So there you go. I just think it's a lovely piece that shows the characters, one of them being a returning local, Grace, and one of them being very much embedded in the community and part of it. And I love that sort of little meeting that you think there's sparks flying, that something's going to happen, but there's no overt sparks flying. It's just a gentle meeting of two people. You get the sense that he's a good man already because he's prepared to drive somebody home who's clearly drunk. And Grace is comfortable enough to hop in the car with him. So, I enjoy the way Meredith writes her characters, and I think it's a lovely way to start the story and give you an insight into the two characters. Did you think, ladies, of that little bit?
Well, I've read this book, so yes, I think it is a good introduction to the two characters. But I wondered, Helene, how important do you think it is that characters form a connection early in a story?
Yeah, it's something that when I'm writing, I like to see them get together fairly early. And I'd love to know from readers whether that's important to them. I think it gives you a slow burn, if you like. So once they've got together, then you've got lots of opportunity to work them through the story and keep putting stumbling blocks in their way and let the relationship grow organically. I'm less of a fan of the sort of the boom that goes, yes, it's this immediate connection and that's happened somewhere, 3 or 4 chapters into the story. I do like seeing them on the page together fairly early on. So, and that might have been part of what really appealed to me with Meredith's lovely story.
I think also, Helene, with this genre, in particular, the romance genre, I think it's really important for those opening chapters to really set the scene. a reader should know pretty well straight up who the main characters are, what their conflict is going to be, and what they might expect from the story. Of course, as authors, we're going to throw in lots of twists and things, but you know, that initial setup is so important. So how do you determine how your settings, how your meetings are going to come together in the beginning of your books?
Because as you girls know, I'm something of an organic writer, a pantster. I have no idea. So half the time I start writing and then go, who's this strange person that's just walked onto the... Oh, my goodness, you must be an important character because you've turned up in the opening scene. Certainly when I go back and do the editing, I'm quite careful to make sure that I do get them together fairly early. I think it's interesting with women's fiction, and that's sort of the line the three of us are also writing stories in this and relationships. And I must have disappeared because Tricia's got that look on her face.
No, I can hear you again now.
And I'm not sure in women's fiction. I'm not sure in women's fiction whether it's as important as in a straight romance. And I know lots of romance readers are also reading and enjoying books that have been written by authors who are writing romance that are also writing women's fiction. And I think it's wonderful that there's that opportunity to explore lots of relationships. But time is ticking on. So I think that we must be up to Tricia's turn to take us that little step further and into the dance between the characters and how they start to get together. And if I vanish, carry on, ladies, I will be back.
Thanks, Helene. I do, that is my passion in my stories, is I think that romance is all about the dance. The characters can meet on the first page or a little way in, but it's all about us as readers knowing they are made for each other, but they don't, or they do, but as writers, we put lots of things in their way. So I am reading to you something from the wine, something in the wine, I should say. Perhaps I need a wine. And about halfway through, you can see this book. So these two characters did meet early on. The sparks flew, but in the opposite direction. They didn't like each other. They, you know, sparks struck off each other. They've slowly developed an understanding, a bit of a friendship. So this is, oh no, I'm on the wrong page. This is Healy and Flynn. And here we are, good. Flynn unlocked the weathered wooden door and led the room. The walls were thick stone with only one small window and the air was cool. The bright sunshine from outside had little chance to warm the room. He flicked the switch to activate a row of modern fluorescent lights. Welcome to the Haystack Tasting Room. He crossed to the opposite wall, drew a bottle from the floor-to-ceiling wine rack, set it down on the old wooden cupboard in the middle of the room that served as a table. He hoped Keely would at least like the taste well enough to allow her artwork to go on the label. The guinea pig. It was the young and less sophisticated wine drinkers he was aiming this wine at, and he was keen to see what her response would be. He unscrewed the cap and poured wine into the two glasses, set one on the table in front of her and picked up the other. He exhaled slowly, swirled the contents in his glass, sniffed it, then stopped. He was conscious of Keely's deep brown eyes watching him closely. She hadn't picked up her glass. Aren't you going to try it? He asked. I had a bad experience the last time I tried the swirling and sniffing. I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm not looking for an expert, just your honest opinion. He could see she was hesitant. I tell you what, I'll take you through the steps of wine tasting. He walked around the makeshift table and stood beside her. Her worried expression made him smile. Just relax. She looked down quickly, leaned forward, and he watched over her shoulder. What do you see? Oh, it looks almost clear. She glanced back at him. Yes, but now pick up the glass, tilt it, and look at it with the white cloth on the bench behind. Her hand hovered over the glass, then she picked it up. It still looks the same to me. Maybe a tinge of green around the edges? Good. Now put it straight to your nose and take a sniff. Healy held the glass so gingerly it was as if she thought it might bite her. He watched as she slowly tipped it to meet her nose. That's it. Now swirl the wine and sniff again. He moved closer. Close your eyes and let your sense of smell take over. That's just a little taste. But for me, there's kind of a parody there with the wine tasting and the two of them, you know, coming together, feeling that slowly that will then build into something between them. But I just like that little, not actually saying it, but just showing it on the page, that they are, you know, gaining some traction together there. So that little sort of piece is what I wanted to read, happening in the middle of the book, to sort of bring that out in the story. So I don't know if you've got a question about that. I don't have any more to add about it, other than it's just that slow reveal, that realization that they might be attracted to each other. And of course that piece goes on longer, but I didn't want to take up too much time.
I will comment, you're very clever to put something of that nature.
It's lovely, very beautifully done. And as Jen says, to find that in the middle of the book just adds a little bit of weight to the story, doesn't it?
Yes.
So Jen,
sorry, Jen,
you must be ready to.
Ah, I'm ready. And that, what a beautiful segue, because your characters, Tricia, are into the wine. Mine are actually quite tiddly. So we have progressed. So I just want to say at the outset to anyone who's thinking about sex scenes, it's not a sex scene I'm going to be reading. I couldn't do that. It's a bedroom scene, but what I want to give you a little bit, in doing this, I want to give you a little bit of behind the scenes of the writing process, because I know a lot of readers are interested in that too. And I had a very interesting experience with my editor when writing this particular scene, so I thought I would share that with you. The bedroom scene is simply just another stage of the relationship in a book. I'm reading from House of Wishes, which is my latest. It is a dual time frame story, so there's actually 2 love stories in here, but I'm reading from the modern day one. The 2 characters are called Beth and Tom. And Beth has come to town, Calangary Crossing, to spread her mum's ashes. Tom is a local cattleman, and yes, they form a relationship. My original, the scene is set up is that they're at a pub. The pub's having a beach party in the middle of the country. They bring sand in and create a beach party atmosphere. So they've got a little bit tiddly. They haven't quite got together, but there's a definite attraction. My original version, the unedited version, goes something like this. So tiddly Beth invites Tom up to her hotel room for tea. They actually go up to the room, they actually drink tea, they sit outside, they admire the stars, and they giggle a lot. Then Tom regales her with a story of the fire at Dawson's Run where he was a child, and then they drink more tea. Then here comes the big sex scene, you ready? It went like this. They laugh, all awkwardness gone, with Tom's tenderness replacing his earlier apprehension. They kiss, they make love, talk, laugh, and make love again. Only after the last crate of stubby bottles hits the recycle bin does Beth fall asleep in his arms. There you go. Wham bam, done. Elvis has left the building. That's it. So of course my editor got a hold of that, and she wrote back. Di Blacklock was my editor, absolutely best editor in the world, great author if you haven't read her books. Okay, she wrote back, wow Jen, you got that over and done with quick, not even a full sentence. And after you spent 10 pages getting them to the room. Not all writers like writing sex scenes, and not all books need them. But again, I'm not even getting a sense of the intimacy that's developing between Beth and Tom. We don't have to witness the act, but we do have to get some sort of idea of the effect it's having on them. This feels like a missed opportunity. And look, I wanted to dig my heels in. I don't like writing bedroom scenes. I'm definitely like these girls here, closed bedroom door with maybe a peek. So I did have to think long and hard. So it was a missed opportunity. And what I've done with this scene is, and I'm going to read it to you. I hope you'll see, obviously, that it's better, but that what I've done is I've added context to the scene. So it's not just sort of a sex scene for the sake of having sex in a book. It's not even sex, so don't go anywhere. But yeah, it shows that there's purpose. It adds to the conflict of the story, basically. So I'm going to read it to you. Starting now. So they're at a pub. They're at a pub and they're a bit tiddly. As fun as bopping with the girls has been, including their sexy bump and grind disco reprise from the 80s and the botched Nutbush City Limits, Beth's head pounds from the DJ's heavy-handed bass. When she spies Tom watching her from amid the raucous bunch of blokes wearing Lifesaver red and yellow, she frowns and cups her hands over both ears. Almost immediately, he takes the cue, nodding his apologies to his mates before wrestling her from Sarah and Caitlin, who grab an arm each in protest. Beth and Tom are both still laughing when they stop in the foyer at the bottom of the pub staircase. When their laughter fades and he's failed to make a move on her, she kisses him, but it's brief and lacks the promise of their previous kiss. Is something wrong? Beth asks, wondering if she's possibly looking haggard in the harsh lighting. Yes, actually, he says, well, before you need to know something. Okay, so Tom has a secret. This is the conflicty bit. A half dozen drunks burst through the door to her left and disappear through the door on her right. What is it? She asks when the foyer is clear. Well, you see, I'm a bloke who prefers to be out in the open. Tonight's been great, but, oh, so you want to be out in the open, she repeats. Okay, sure, sorry. She giggles, feeling foolish. She's totally misread everything. Let's go outside then. She grabs Tom's hand, but he doesn't budge. No, Beth, I mean, I prefer to be open and honest. You are amazing and beautiful and totally unexpected. The thing is, Beth stops Tom mid-sentence with a finger against his lips. Look, she says, blushing, obviously I respect your honesty, and I admit my comprehension is not the best after a few wines. But if you want honesty from me, Tom, I didn't expect someone like you either. Shh, she says, let me finish. I'm 40 years old, soon to be 41, and getting older by the minute standing here. I've been so angry and confused and lost until tonight with you. I feel like the old me, and I've enjoyed a much needed good time. While I can appreciate the sweet country gentleman thing, we both know I won't be sleeping until this music stops. So unless you're dumping me because I'm not your type, or unless a woman is breaking some small town protocol by asking a guy up to her room, I'd really enjoy some quiet and some company. Your company, she qualifies. There is a good selection of tea bags upstairs, if it helps you decide. If not, Beth shrugs, waits, but Tom suddenly seems overly interested in the floor, his paws stretching out until it's embarrassingly long. She's about to admit defeat and say goodnight when his hand tightens around hers. Tea bags, eh? He looks up, grinning. Say no more. Hashtag great company, loves tea. Unsurprisingly, they skip the tea station at the top of the stairs and continue along the hallway hand in hand. Beth's ridiculously nervous all of a sudden. She can't turn her mind off Tom's earlier story about a destructive fire on Dawson's Run when, barely a toddler, he'd been determined to one day become a fireman. In her slightly inebriated and highly charged state, Beth is now visualising a grown-up Tom in yellow fireman's pants and braces, his bare beat-worthy chest and biceps slick with sweat and smeared with ash. There is no stopping to sip hot tea in Beth's fantasy version. They are just two hot bodies jumping each other the second the door to her room closes. The pair take turns to strip their clothes away, not bothering to fold the bed cover back, and they're into it. The sex wild, the orgasm crazy. Oh, Beth, it has been a long time. To curb her grin, she bites her bottom lip. Then she slips the barrel key into the lock on the door, shoving it open. Sadly, the room isn't a movie set, and Tom isn't a fireman. He's a gentleman who she's wishing wasn't so well-mannered. A penny, Tom asks after shutting the door behind them and taking both her hands in his, pulling her close. She has to look up slightly to meet his gaze, and the spark in his eyes ignites another giggle. Not for $1 million, will I tell you what I was thinking, she says. Some secrets are best left as secrets, don't you reckon? I suppose you could try kissing it out of me. That's one hell of an invitation. If only Tom could stop thinking with his head. Is she right about secrets? Or is he a fool for not telling her before tonight? Then again, he hadn't expected to find himself in her room. Their bodies almost already fused, the outcome inevitable if he doesn't stop kissing her. Beth, he says breathless, I need to tell you, she replies, her lips caressing his ear before working their way back to his mouth, pausing briefly as both hands tangle with his hair. There's only 3 words I need to hear from you, Tom Dawson, and one of them had better be condom. Barely breaking from her kiss, his words a whisper, he slips a hand into the back pocket of his shorts, mumbling, hashtag he has condom. Giggling and becoming increasingly impatient with Tom's buttons, Beth slides both hands underneath and reefs his shirt over his head. Flinging the fluoro floral number to the floor, she does the same with her own shirt, stripping down to the white lace bra before kissing Tom again. Bloody hell, what's a bloke to do? Maybe if Tom closes his eyes and imagines anyone but Beth, he might block the raging battle that isn't going away, to tell her or not to tell her. Beth, oh Beth, I really wish I could. Oh, believe me, she interrupts, I'm wishing the same. So please stop talking, Tom Dawson, and take me to bed. They fall onto the mattress, a tangle of limbs and lust and longing. They kiss, make love, talk, laugh, and make love again. Only after the last crate of stubby bottles hits the recycle bin somewhere outside do they fall asleep in each other's arms. Thank you to Di Blacklock for making me do that.
Bravo to Di. And wonderful, wonderful that you put all that extra tension and conflict into what was a love scene. And yeah, well done.
Thank you. Yes, it was. It was bringing, I think, that whole. Because also, you know I learned very early on from the Disney Pixar people that a character has to be admirable. Readers want to admire their heroes, and it's not very admirable of Tom to, bet a woman whilst being a little bit deceitful or, not truthful with her. So I had to be a little bit mindful of not losing readers in that regard as well. So that was another thing I had to sort of think about. So, so does he tell the secret, and what happens? You'll just have to get the book. Read the book.
Well, Tricia, have you had any experiences where you've had to rewrite love scenes because your editors felt it needed more, or you felt it needed more after you'd done the initial story?
I think when you're editing, obviously, sometimes when you first write the book, you just get everything down on the page. You're kind of telling yourself the story, really. Then when you go back, you sort of think, oh, you think for yourself that's perhaps a little bit stilted, or it hasn't just moved so nicely. So, of course, in the editing process, yes. I haven't ever had an editor say, to change anything like that too much. Certainly not in the case that Jenn was explaining, which was happy ending for all, I assume. But I did, with my historicals, for instance, they were intended to be pretty straightforward action adventure stories, and my editor did suggest that by giving them giving the main character, who was a male, a bit more softening by spending more time on he obviously fell in love and he married, but a bit more time on that rather than brushing over it. And I think it did make for a better story. It fleshed the characters out better to see that other side of them, made them more 3D perhaps. And so yeah, that was mine. But what about you, Helene? Have you ever had to do that?
Northern Heat, poor lovely Ali, my lovely publisher, I got her all hot and bothered because I had a scene where the two characters finally get themselves together, and they're on a boat in the middle of the reef off Cooktown. It's warm, it's sunny. Clearly they're not wearing much because they've been swimming. It's a beautiful old teak decked boat, and to me it was a perfect place to have hot sex. So I wrote a scene which was a lot more detailed than anything that I'd written for Ali before. And she sent me a message saying, "Oh, I had to fan myself. Can we lose some of that, please?" I was like, but that's perfect for them. But, the reality was they aren't really the sorts of books that I write. I do tend to close the bedroom door. So to have left the cockpit open, that's probably a bit... But they were in the cockpit of the boat, so to have left that, la la la. So that one got rewritten into a much more gentle, and as it was a moment for them as well that went badly awry, so they didn't actually get to consummate anything, because at the moment where it's possible. Caitlin, of course, has a flashback to the domestic violence that she's escaped from. So it was one of those stories that, in hindsight, Ali was absolutely spot on. We didn't need to have taken to that. We didn't need the sensuality of that. We needed the build up, but that was it. So yeah, that's the only experience that I've had. So, and nobody's going to ask me to write any more sex scenes. Oh dear, but I think Jenn did a wonderful job of that. So well done you. So just quickly, because we're starting to run out of time, have you got your little, I think we should give our readers something to look for. Shall we show our little rendezvous codes, which we need to make sure our names and our codes are in full shot? That's it. So people have got time to read that off the screens. We'll leave it up there for a little while. And while we're holding it there, how's things changed for you in times of COVID, Jenn? What's it meant to your writing?
Oh, gosh. Well, my life more than my writing, because because I'm out of Myrtle the Turtle. Myrtle the Turtle is in storage because they closed down all non-essential travel. And even though I'm no fixed address, I don't have a home to go to. They were all telling us to go home, but many of us don't have a home who are traveling. So we had to find a home. And so luckily I'm in my sister's place at the moment. This is my sister's lovely library of books. She has excellent taste. So writing has been disruptive, though, I think, because I've been moving to different locations. When someone gets sick of us, we move on to somewhere else. Or, but just also that very period of will they or won't they kick us out of the caravan park. It was very, very unsettling to all of a sudden to be told you have to go, and there was nowhere to go. So it was a little bit scary. So yeah, mind-wise, I've just been all over the place, and then I've been learning all sorts of things like everybody, Zoom and all these other things to try and connect with readers. So it's probably the connecting with readers that has changed more than my writing, and it's taking more time than I've got less writing time. How about you, Tricia?
Yes, I would agree, except I didn't have to move out of home like you did. But staying put for me wasn't a difficulty. I sort of thought, well, I will use this time to really get stuck into my next book. I certainly was editing when it all started, so that was fine. I got the editing done, but I did find it very distracting. In the early days, I was drawn to the news all the time, drawn to that. We had 24/7 bombardment of what was happening around the world and at home. And so I found myself, watching that. And then I had to really, say, okay, it's not changing in a day. So we really need to turn it off and start to refocus. The other thing, I missed being able to do just the normal things of, popping out for coffee with people or visiting my grandies in Adelaide, those sorts of things. My aunt in the nursing home, was all sort of put on hold for a while. But luckily in South Australia, we weren't as locked down as some of the other places. So we were able to, have someone over for a coffee and just sit outside in the fresh air and, have a chat and social distance and all that sort of thing. So that went well. But writing wise, it did take me a while to get stuck into the actual writing. And like you said, Jenn, I found that what's taken a lot of time is I've now had to do a lot of things online, which you think will be quick and easy, but it's the setting up and the preparing and, running things online actually takes a lot of your time. So not that I begrudge it, because it's been fun and it's been different, and I've enjoyed interacting with readers in a different way, and obviously with you guys in a different way. But what about you, Helene? You're sort of already in isolation in a way in your boat, but
yeah, and we're almost out of time, so I'll actually wrap up now. For us, it really wasn't much difference, but it's been lovely chatting to you ladies today, and I hope the readers enjoy it. Thank you to ARRLD, thank you to Sharon for all her hard work, and I look forward to seeing you guys and all the readers out and about somewhere around Australia and the world. So thank you, ladies.
Thanks, ARRLD. Bye.